session today on our last day of Retail Fest. This is the Operations and AI stage, and today's session we've got a panel. The topic they'll be covering is scaling while the house is on fire. And we've got Julia moderating on the end here. So if we could just welcome the panel that are already on the stage, that would be great.
Thank you so much. So we all love talking about scaling, and we work our butts off to get there and scale to higher revenue. And one thing that I don't hear very often is what actually happens when you scale, the things that break, the feelings behind the scenes, and what all four of us have experienced while scaling our businesses is that disaster can hit. Disaster usually hits unexpected. And what we want to do in this panel today is show you ways to prepare yourself for disaster hitting, have less founder dependency, and prepare yourself for more scale. So thank you so much for joining me today, Annabelle, Phil, and Ian. And we already had a pre-discussion that was quite honest, raw, vulnerable. So thank you so much for that and sharing so openly. And please forgive me that I have a lot of notes, but my brain is my memory like a goldfish, and Jethro's and Dean's party was quite fun. But before I introduce you officially, what I want to say is you guys are not just like industry names to me. I now work with Ian at Zellis, and I met Ian about 8 years ago here at Retail Fest, and I literally have my job as a consultant with Zellis now because of the networking that I did with Ian all those years back. And I've been coming every year for the last 8-9 years, and you two are the founders of Retail Fest. You had a vision really early on how important it was to bring business owners together. We're all lonely in what we do. It's important we help each other, we network, open each other's network to each other, and just help each other out. And a lot of what I've done in my business has come from here, come from the things that I heard and the sessions I attended. So that's amazing. Thank you so much. So quite a full circle moment now to sit here with you guys. But let's get into their intros. Ian Johnston is a co-founder and strategic advisor at Zellis Australia, helping brands turn e-commerce into serious, scalable profit. He spent over 3 decades in the game, building, scaling, and exiting businesses across retail, wholesale, and distribution, long before most people even knew what e-commerce was. He was a day one eBay seller and later sat on their seller advisory panel, giving him a front row seat to the evolution of marketplaces from the very beginning. Across his career, he's owned and held stakes in around a dozen businesses, most successfully exited. And he's still in the trenches today and actively operating, not just advising from the sidelines. And having worked alongside him for nearly a year now, I can also tell you what drives him is helping founders cut through the noise and focus on what actually grows a business, and not just from experience, but because he's an incredible human who never forgets how hard business can be, and it's shaped by his own personal challenges. Phil and Annabelle, as I said, you guys built Retail Fest, which is just like an insane privilege to interview here. And Phil has a passion for creating connections that led him to establish Retail Global events over 20 years ago, during his time as a leading global marketplace seller. In late 2022, Phil sold Retail Global to Post and returned to the forefront of e-commerce with Metcart Marketplace. Past milestones include being eBay's #1 seller in 2007 and 2008 with Entertainment House, and more recently establishing Australia's #1 medical marketplace, Metcart. Phil has raised over $1 million in cash for charities since 2010 and delivered over $3 million in free products and services with his Frontliners initiative. That is just insane, like reading those numbers. Phil is the CEO of Metcart and Vice President of 101.5 Douglas FM. Welcome, Phil. Annabelle Tague is a director at Metcart Australia, where she leads inventory, marketing, and seller relationships. She has worked alongside Phil since Metcart launched during COVID, playing a central role in building the business from the ground up. Annabelle oversees communications across both B2B and B2C and manages the offshore marketing and communications teams. She's known for her sharp attention to detail and her ability to manage a complex product range, with Metcard now spanning over 70,000 products across 13,000 categories. Like, those numbers also blow my mind. I've got about like 20 SKUs, so I'm like, whoa. And I'm Julia Foyster, the founder of Treat Real Foods, an all-natural, gluten-free seasonings and balsamic vinegar brand, and I'm also a fifth-generation farmer with 19 farms spanning across the East Coast, from the Atherton Tablelands all the way down to Tenterfields. So usually I don't wear the fancy sneakers, it's more like the cowboy boots and the cowboy hat, but let's get into it. So topic is scaling while the house is on fire. And as I said previously, for all four of us, that fire hit. In my case, it was actual fire. It was a bushfire. And I thought my entire family had burned down. The bushfires ripped through our properties, took out our avocado trees, and it was just like an incredibly challenging time emotionally. And we had hailstorms, takeouts. I think that one was about a $12 million loss in 10 minutes. I don't think we have recovered fully from that. And it's just, insane when those things happen. But tell me, what happened in your life? What fire hit your house?
Sure, maybe Annabelle can start. Actually, I'll go around. Can I see a show of hands of how many business owners we have in the room? Great. I feel for you all. It's been quite a couple of years. But Annabelle and I started Metcard during COVID, and we had an explosion of orders around the time of 2021. Yeah. And then last year I had to deal with throat cancer and spent a number of months in Brisbane and left the business in Annabelle's hands, which was the best thing I ever did.
No, it was a very, very tough time because it came around very quickly. And 1 minute we're sitting there cruising along, as best as we could. And next minute we had 1 week for Phil to pack up, leave me on the property, not with just the property, but with the business and everything, and unknowingly what's going to happen, how long where I was going back and forth, how he was going to cope on his own. And what the outcome eventually would be. So it was a lot of pressure, and you go into survival mode, and and luckily, or as you say, it's not luck, all that hard work we'd done over those years, setting up and lining our ducks up for a day for that like that, everything just went really smoothly. It was stressful, and I kept myself busy, and it was the best distraction was having a business to turn to, but it all went really well. Thank God for the things we put in place. But it was tough.
Yeah.
No fun.
How did the day-to-day look like?
Day-to-day was just getting up very early, exercising, getting my mind clear, and then just putting out any little fires that would come up, and just making sure my great communication with my team, and all those systems that we put in place flowed. It's a few little speed humps along the way, but that's to be expected. But just keep focused, and a glass of wine in the afternoon.
What about you, Ian? Tell us about your house fire.
Yeah, well, I've probably had a few over the years, but I started, as Julia mentioned earlier, really early in e-commerce in 1997. I started my first auto parts business in late 2001. And not too long after that, we were scaling quite quickly. I'd come out of working for Toyota and had quite a lot of contacts in the industry. It was just me. I was selling, picking, packing, the whole thing. This is very much at a trade level then. Also launching online and trying to manage the very early days of eBay. And my mum at the time was diagnosed with leukemia and then subsequently passed away, and it was very, very difficult to actually pull out of the business when it's just you. Like, there's no one else there. Luckily, I had one of my former bosses, one of my first parts manager in Toyota, who had by then retired, and very kindly came and stepped in and was able to wing it while I was going through that process. once that sort of happened, I've also got a son who had a severe disability, which was a thing that staggered and grew. So based on the experience with Mum, I realised fairly quickly, and with the help of one of my other former Toyota bosses who very kindly sort of started mentoring me fairly early in the piece, his message to me was delegation, delegation, build your business around your life. You know what's coming in this instance, which was a little bit of a heads up. So try and grow and structure in a way that you can get a team around you where you can actually manage the day-to-days and you can step out of the place. And that certainly paid dividends much, much later when he finally hit a wheelchair and became very high intensive to look after. So I was very lucky that we could grow enough that we could afford it, and not everybody can, because a lot of people, and I'm sure some of you in the room, are still solo operators. So I really try and advocate now, think about your life, think about what you want your business to deliver you, whether it's, you know, a big mansion in Toorak and a Lamborghini or a beach shack, it doesn't matter. Try and plan where you want to be, and also just give some quiet thought to what can go wrong, and just have some basic mitigation plans. If something happens, look, we all have an event in our life. Hopefully not many, but we all have it. It's life. Roll forward many, many, many years later, I'd sold out of those businesses. I'd started another business which was very heavily dependent on me. Thankfully for me, I actually had my nephew employed as my manager at the time, who's since actually bought the business off me. I think he's here floating around somewhere. Thank you, Josh. And my wife was misdiagnosed and had a sudden heart attack and required open heart surgery, and it really hit us. And what hit us the most then was it cost an awful lot of money, and we didn't have enough in our business at the time to carry, you know, marketplaces. When I started like eBay, you got paid every down. Now you've got to carry quite enormous sums of money to actually carry marketplaces where your payment terms can vary anywhere from straight away still with eBay to up to 60 days with people like Amazon. So having financial planning in place to actually get through those sorts of events is really important too. Again, you know, I don't want to be a doomsday here, but these are real things in real life that happen. And if you think about them a little bit, even if it's just some insurances, that sort of thing, it can really take you forward.
You just mentioned something really important, the insurance. Tell us more about that, because it's something I feel a lot of business owners don't think about when they are just starting off. Obviously, cash flow can be really tight. You invest in stock and building team, building systems, and insurance can be a second thought.
Read your fine print. So we had income protection and all sorts of great things for both my wife and I. Because we got quite tight through the process, she actually went back to work 2 days early and they knocked back the claim. And there was absolutely nothing we could do about it. And yes, there it was, buried in the fine print. Idiot me for not reading it. So be very careful when you do take those things out. Read that fine print. Understand what it's about. It's really, really important.
And what kind of insurance was it?
That was an income protection policy. And yeah, it was 120 days you had to be off. She went back to work 2 days before that.
Yeah,
and we didn't know.
As a German, I do read fine print. Man, you've just that was a long answer. You answered basically all questions that I have here. But one thing, an analogy that I really love is the glass ball and the bouncy ball analogy. We all have bouncy balls and we have glass balls, and you cannot drop the glass balls. And everyone has to decide, what are your glass balls? For me, that's obviously my children. You know, business, it bounces back. Maybe customer trust could be kind of in between. So have a think about what can never drop. How do you protect that when disaster hits? Who can step in? If you have an income protection insurance, you have the money to pay someone to step into the business, and the business will keep ticking over. And tell me, when a job of two very hardworking people dropped onto two shoulders, was there a moment where things broke, and what kind of broke for you?
I guess it was our customer service when we didn't have that set up initially, and we had such a massive scale in our business when we were ticking over like 1,000 orders a month, and then we went up to 38,000 in a month, and it was all boots on ground. What do we do? I was the only person doing customer service. I was basically dealing with the sellers, everything, and it was my baby, and I really didn't want to let it go. And I was like, no one's going to talk to my customers the way I do. No one's going to talk to my sellers like I do. So, and I was very protective, and it was like I had to relinquish all that very quickly. You know, we only had one sort of in the background, and then we had to scale up through Zealous. We got 14 in with 24 hours, like when everything exploded. And, you know, we obviously trained them up and that sort of thing. So there was a break, and we made sure that will never break again. And that was the most important part, because, you know, after that, then there's sellers and you get issues all down the track. But yes, that was a nasty break.
And you shared with me that there's a really cool tool that you use for your customer service that ensures that, you know, you keep your tone of voice and your values.
So our tech stack is BigCommerce, Marketplace at back end, which controls our sellers and our SKUs. Another key component is SearchSpring for our search, and then Podium, which we use for our communications. Highly recommend Podium. It's an amazing tool. But one of the great things we use that tool for, it records all the conversations. So Annabelle would talk to our sellers, we'll talk to our customers, and then our team can go in and listen in on those calls to see what our tone is, to see the way we deal with problems. And then we can also go in and listen to the way our customer service team deal with our customers. So they've got a layer of AI behind that too, so we can summarize all that. But that was a critical tool. If we ever had an explosion like that, and God forbid we'd love it, we can deal with it now, absolutely.
Amazing. What about you, Ian? Is there something that really helped you get through?
Yeah, look, probably a little bit later in the journey, I discovered CRM systems quite early. Before you had your Fresh Desks, your Zendesks and Podiums and everything else that's available now, there was a little one out of the UK. And really quickly, I was able to establish articles that actually reduced our inbound inquiries immensely. We were getting probably 200, 300, 400 emails a week. Where's my item? Where's this? All the shit you guys know, right? It just happens all the time. It drives you insane. But if you put some really well-written articles in that explain those processes, it really brings it down. And we went from sort of 300 emails a week down to 40, which were much more genuine things. Roll forward a few years, we still use, you know, different CRM tools now in our businesses. We use them in Zealous. I use them in my retail businesses. You guys have the advantage now as well of AI coming along, and there's some incredible tools out there. As Phil mentioned, Podium's one I like, and I'm not giving him a plug for the sake of giving a plug. From an agency perspective, when we're recommending things, it's actually the one tool that we've recommended to people, and I use personally, that's worked for everybody without fail. So that's why we kind of like it. So look at back office automations. Where can you get your people moved where they're going to make you the most money? Automate repetitive tasks. To me, AI is not about getting rid of or replacing people. To me, AI is shifting people into their best place, where they're the happiest, where they deliver the most ROI to your business, and use the other tools to really, really close up that back office space. And it really frees you up as a founder too, because once it's automated, you don't tend to have a huge amount of errors. So
I think a lot of people are getting sort of a bit anxious about this AI that content everywhere. And you're like, oh, how am I've got to be involved in this AI revolution? And of course, we use it for those basic tasks. We say to our team, you know, what you're going to do is learn how to replace yourself with AI in terms of building agents and automating your job. And then we can find the next thing for you to do. But really, AI is a responsibility also of our partners. AI is really the responsibility of our partners. You know, BigCommerce, in our case, BigCommerce, Podium, Search Spring, which is Atheos now. That's their job to we pay them big money, as partners, and their job is to find the use of AI and then deliver that in their product. So that's the way I think about AI.
Yeah, no, and you're very right. And it's obviously the thing, AI at the moment, but we also have to remind ourselves what was the latest stats that came out. AI purchases are currently still at 4%. And we have to remind ourselves, the people that are in the room here, we're already in the top 5% using AI to our advantage. But one thing that I do with AI in my own business is create standard operating procedures, because I'm a firm believer that if you want to replace yourself, you need to be able to tell someone else really quickly how that job functions, and especially when you have a high turnover in staff, which in agriculture we have an extremely high turnover. We have about 200 backpackers and seasonal workers come through the year. So there's videos and there is like check boxes and anything. But how I use it is I do a task once and I record myself do the task. I run it through AI, turn it into a standard operating procedure. I have an AI agent just for standard operating procedures, and I don't have just a random 50 SOPs. I think in flows. What happens first? The order comes in. What happens to get that order out? What happens if there's no more supply? And I love to break things down into simple terms, because at the end of the day, all a business is supply and demand. Can you supply the customer so you don't lose the trust? And have you already set yourself up for the next sale come in? Because we can get busy dispatching and sending it out, and then suddenly, oh my God, where's the next sale actually come from? So what did you actually do when you went from 1,000 orders to 38,000 orders? How did your supply look like there when you didn't have a demand problem?
Yeah, it was a double-edged sword. I mean, it was a beautiful, exciting time, and then it was as scary as hell. But, it was reach out to people I reached out to these guys, to Tim Davies, and we needed help, we needed staff, so we looked towards the Philippines, You talk about learning. I wish we'd done that earlier. If we had that set up before the rush, we employed our first customer service people in Australia very expensively, but if we were smart enough, we would have moved in earlier on that, and then we could have met that scale a lot faster. But we're certainly in a position now where we could deal with any of those, big tidal waves of orders. Please bring it. Not in this marketplace, but yeah, that was it.
And you also shared with me that you brought in a CEO.
Yeah, we hired Dylan, who was working with Catch of the Day, and he was one of their early hires, because I did have experience as a marketplace seller. I was eBay's #1 seller in 2007, 2008, so I thought I sort of knew a bit about it, but I didn't. On the other side, it was very different, and we were lacking incredibly in systems, so it was, again, hire someone smarter than yourself, get them in, get them to implement all those CRMs and systems, all the stuff I'm not good at, and that was a game changer. Yeah.
Yeah, I love what you say. Hire people that are smarter than you. You got to have the experts around you, and if you can't have them in the team, at least have an advisor or someone you can definitely turn to. What about you, Ian?
Yeah, I was really lucky. I learnt that lesson really early on. One of my former bosses, who owns some Toyota dealers in Western Australia, took the time to mentor me a little bit, and the big message he gave me way back in the early 2000s was delegate, 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 delegate. You're not good at everything, mate. Figure out what you're really good at, do that. Get people in who are really good at what I'm not good at. And that was a mantra I really followed, and that helped us manage scale when those parts businesses started to get into the $1 million a month plus numbers. It's becoming a really serious business now, and it was quite scary because I was still very young, but following that advice was amazing, and just spreading it out. And these days, there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of products out there. You got salespeople bombarding you with absolutely everything, and so many of the products are really good, but they're not necessarily the right fit. Which one's the right fit? How does it work? So, probably another great session that Julie is helping host, and our CEO Tim Davies, is having a chat about how advisories can work for you as well, and how you can kind of cut through all that noise to find out, hey, I'm an individual business. I'm different. There's no two that are the same. In my nearly 30 years, next year will be 30 years that I've been doing e-commerce, and there's no two businesses that are the same. So you've got to look at your own.
I love delegate.
Ooh.
Is that on? Something going on with the microphones. No, is that on? Can you hear? Oh,
Is this one?
Okay, because the speakers are facing that way, so we can't really hear ourselves.
1, 2, 1.
Yeah, delegating. I want to add a layer to that. It's not just delegating, but also creating a decision ownership ladder. You gotta empower your staff to make decisions, because otherwise at the end of the day, you will have the staff there, but they will constantly come back to you. And I have one of my staff, let's not name names, she's beautiful, but she's also a little insecure, so she's constantly asking me questions. Oh, what shall I do here? What shall I do there? And I'm like, what would you do? And I'll just put it back on her and try to just help her step into making her own decisions. And when I say decision ownership ladder, let me read this out so I don't get it wrong. But there's level 1. It's like ask me everything that you can create into your own FAQ for the individual roles. Level 2 is recommend and I decide. Level 3 is you decide, but I review. And then level 4 is you decide, and I never, ever hear about it again.
Can I just add to that too? We found with the Philippines, when we went to the Philippines to get people, that they're very structured. They would not move outside the box. You know, they have the script, and that's it. But what we did, like you, is we would say to them, okay, you've got your list of questions, and we would say, what would you do? Now, we say to all of our staff, think like an owner. And typically, each day, they would come back with a bunch of questions, and we'd say, okay, that's great, have the question, but we want to know what your solution is to that question, and then we'll say to you, yes or no. And that was, you know, it took a lot of time, but now they're empowered to make decisions. They've got confidence to make decisions. And letting them give you the answer, and you sort of approving or not, is a great way to train people.
I totally agree. Empowerment is everything. And another thing that I have implemented recently in my own business is that I don't just have an ideal customer profile, I also write an ideal staff profile. I make decisions based on their strength, not necessarily their skills, because attitude is everything and skills are learnable. So I don't know if you know DISC profiling, but you know, you want a quick decision maker in your marketing who's confident, but then in my production room, I need someone who is super detail oriented so they don't get the recipes wrong and put the right ingredients in. And then in dispatch can be a boring job. I want someone who's just steady throughout the storm. And I now write out exactly those things that I want to see in those people that step into that role. And I'm very specific when I recruit for the role as well, which brings me again back to the founder dependency. Like, everyone can do a little test. It's like, what job am I currently doing? Is that a $10 admin job? Is that a $1,000 strategy job? Or is it a $10,000 growth job? And needless to say, none of us should do the $10 admin job. And the business, and I mean, we've all felt it and we see it all the time. There's this huge founder dependency. Are there any more tips before we open for questions to the floor that you would like to share?
Yeah, don't go out all night like Rick did last night. You know, it's a long game, Rick. You could have gone out tonight. There he is. No, but we'd love to take some questions from the floor if anyone's got any. But any feedback from you?
Yeah, I think just sort of reinforcing the message, take some time out for yourself, really think through everything about your business, look for some advice. There are scaling opportunities as well, as Phil mentioned earlier. We were able to deploy our Philippines team really, really quickly to get him a lot of customer support in a hurry. Ultimately, because we love the man so much, some of them ended up working full-time and still are to this day, and they're directly under Phil. They're the most amazing human beings ever. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think when things get heavy, you always just, keep motivated, open lines of communication with friends, family, business partners or other partners. It can be daunting sometimes, and you just don't know where to go and you're thinking, what am I doing wrong? But just, keep moving forward, keep motivated and, drink some wine.
Or gin tonic.
At the end of the day.
Yeah,
Rick?
and just remember, if your business depends on you, you don't have a business, you have a job. Do we have any audience questions?
Hold on one sec.
Ooh.
Other than red wine, which is a great motivator sometimes, what are your motivators? I'm interested in what keeps you going day to day.
I have thought about it many, many times. And everyone goes, oh, you have to have your why and you do it all for your family. And in my case, it's actually not true. I think I was born with a motivation. I just get up and I feel like I need to achieve something for the day to feel good. So there's nothing in particular that motivates me. I like to make money to have choices. I'm not necessarily money hungry, but I like to have a lot of horses and they're bloody expensive. So my motivation is I need another horse, so I better work hard. Yeah, that's me. I have nothing in particular that motivates me, but I do feel that I have more motivation when I have a very balanced life. I know when my energy is at its best and it's not when I'm hungover. So I also try and look after myself, physical health, mental health, as good as I can, and try to balance life as good as I can.
Just a quick one on that. I wish it was money. It's not my motivator. I just like building shit and seeing it operating and interacting and keeping people employed and that sort of stuff.
It's pretty much the same for me as well. Just the love of the business, being a business owner, having that freedom and that flexibility that it gives you and the empowerment it gives you as well. It's a great way to make a living. It's tough, but it does have its, and that motivates you, to do better, all the time. It's great.
What do you say, you work 100 hours a week so you can escape the 9 to 5? Yes.
And I'd concur with that too. I mean, I actually love, particularly since I joined Zealous and I'm doing a lot of advisory work with people, I love building it for me. I love helping build it for others. I love the fact that my business has given me the opportunity to be there for my family at really big times of need that, to be frank, I would have never had in a job. So, that was really important to me too.
Awesome. I think we have time for one last question before we wrap up. Unless there is none. Oh, well then, help me thank our beautiful panel, Ian, Phil, and Annabelle. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. And thanks to Rick for coming today too. I really appreciate it, mate.
Thank you all for coming along. Really appreciate it. Cheers.